Is this the police? Please come immediately. I have something urgent to discuss. On my wedding day, I was in an accident. My much-anticipated marriage to my beloved Chase. I had been looking forward to this day for months. Thankfully, it wasn't a major accident, but I had to be hospitalized for examination, leading to the cancellation of our wedding. I was incredibly frustrated and found myself hating the other party involved in the accident. They insisted it was my fault and demanded money. While at the hospital for a report to the police, I reviewed the dashcam footage and heard a shocking conversation between Chase and my mother-in-law, Marissa. I couldn't believe it. I immediately reported it to the police. My name is Frederica. I'm 30 years old. I usually work in an office. I met Chase 3 years ago. He was a regular at a bar I went to with my friend Alicia from work. I'm usually shy and don't typically drink with strangers, but that day I was drunk after drinking for a long time. I don't remember clearly, but at some point, I started talking to Chase, who was sitting next to me. We ended up drinking with Chase, Alicia, and the bartender David until the morning. By the time we left, I felt as if we had been friends forever. We exchanged contact information that day and started going out drinking together frequently after work. I'd often go to the bar with Alicia, and before I knew it, I became a regular. We'd barbecue, go on trips, and it felt like I was back in my college days. Spending so much time together, I began to develop feelings for Chase. He might be a bit crude at times, but he always made us laugh with his sharp wit. Whenever we talked about going on a trip, he was the one to arrange hotels and transportation. It didn't take long to fall for Chase, who was both funny and dependable. At that time, I didn't know what Chase thought of me. I was afraid to express my feelings to Chase, worried it might ruin our friendship among the four of us. So I kept my feelings to myself, not even telling Alicia. Months passed as we continued our regular outings. One day, as we were all drinking, Alicia suddenly announced, "Frederica and Chase should date too. It's obvious you both have feelings for each other," she said. I never thought Chase liked me, so I was blushing and speechless when Alicia said that. Alicia always knows everything. Chase laughed and said, "I like you, Frederica. Will you go out with me?" As he reached out his hand to me, I nodded and held Chase's hand. I felt like I was in a dream and started to cry. "Wow, Frederica is crying," exclaimed Alicia, and everyone laughed. We successfully started dating that day. Afterward, the four of us hung out less, and I spent more time with Chase. Every day with Chase was filled with happiness. We traveled to various places and created many memories. Around the time we were about to celebrate our 3rd anniversary, Alicia and David announced they were getting married, and I was as happy as if it were my own. We planned to celebrate by going out for drinks, but Chase said he had to work late and ended up not coming. I waited until late at night, but he never showed up. I started feeling that Chase was becoming distant and cold. "I waited for you yesterday. It was a celebration. You could have at least shown your face," I told him over the phone the next day. "It's work. Can't be helped. I've sent my congratulations," he replied coldly. I began to think about my future with Chase. Of course, I loved him, and despite his coldness, he could still be the funny and reliable man I fell in love with. Maybe it was just a rough patch. However, I was turning 30 and thought that if we weren't going to marry, maybe it was better to break up than to continue a stagnant relationship. A few months later, Chase suddenly became kind again. Maybe it was just a rough patch after all, and I felt relieved. "It seems we might have been going through a rough patch recently. How about we go on a trip on the next long weekend?" I suggested. Chase seemed to think the same and was happy. "Of course, it's getting cold, so let's go skiing," he replied, and we discussed where to go. Once we decided on the location, Chase had already arranged the accommodations and transportation, just like the first time we traveled together. It made me feel nostalgic. I was looking forward to the trip more than anything. On the day of the trip, we stayed at a hotel and went sightseeing. Laughing with Chase, I enjoyed a relaxed time and realized again how much I loved him. That night, as we drank together, we reminisced about everything since we'd met. Life has been so fun since I met Chase, I thought sincerely. Then I want to make more memories with you. "Frederica, will you marry me?" Chase asked, reaching out his hand to me. Without hesitation, I took Chase's hand. It was just like when we started dating, and so we decided to get married. Just imagining our married life ahead made me incredibly happy. After deciding to marry, there was so much to do, like greetings and wedding preparations. It was busy. Chase was very cooperative, and we spent nights discussing and deciding various things over drinks. Chase's father had passed away due to illness when Chase was in elementary school. His mother, Marissa, is very much like Chase, talkative and funny. One thing that bothered me a bit was when the three of us talked, she never looked at me. Even when we were making our marriage greetings, Chase and she would get caught up in the conversation, and I would just be laughing beside them. I was a little concerned about her not looking at me, but I tried to think she might be as shy as I am. I hoped we could gradually build a good relationship. I assumed that I would spend the day before the wedding with Chase. After bringing in the luggage and having a brief meeting when we got home in the car. "I'm staying at my parents' house tonight. See you tomorrow," Chase said. "Wait, aren't we supposed to spend today together?" I asked. "No, we'll live together from tomorrow. Today, I have to be filial," he replied. Chase had been cooperative with the wedding preparations, but he had been staying at his parents' house these past few days. Even yesterday, he stayed there, and I had to prepare the luggage alone before picking him up by car for our meeting. We drove to the venue together. Since we had also returned by car, I didn't expect him to go back to his parents again. He ended up taking a taxi to his parents' house that night. It bothered me a little, but from tomorrow we'd be together forever. Once the wedding was over, we had plans for a honeymoon. Filial piety is, of course, important. I decided to be positive and endure just for today. That night, while taking a half-body bath, I looked back at photos of memories with Chase. I was a bit nervous but fell asleep, imagining the guests enjoying themselves. In my dream, I was having the wedding, and on the morning of the wedding day, I was awakened by Chase's phone call, worried I had overslept. I checked the time, but it was still earlier than I had planned to wake up. "What's up so early in the morning?" I asked Frederica. "Sorry, I forgot the shoes I'm supposed to wear today. I thought I brought them over, but they were still in the car. Can you bring them over?" she replied. Despite being pushed by Chase's rush, I said, "What? I can't drive today because of the alcohol. I'll take a taxi." "No, Mom's driving back home. She doesn't drink, so don't worry about that. It's already arranged," he said, half asleep and not wanting to talk any further. "All right, talk to you later," I replied. The wedding venue was about a 20-minute drive away. I sometimes drove, and if Marissa was going to take the car back, I wouldn't have to worry about the return trip. Chase seemed in a hurry, so I reluctantly proceeded with the preparations. I checked multiple times for any forgotten items and confirmed Chase's belongings in the car. To avoid traffic, I left home a bit early. Today was an important day. I drove more carefully than usual to the venue. Just a short distance from the venue, the car next to me suddenly tried to change lanes. Startled, I braked, but before I knew it, I had collided with the other car. I had never experienced a traffic accident before and was so shocked that I barely remember the moment of impact. All I remember is feeling a huge shock throughout my body. I was in pain, but fortunately, I was conscious. The other driver was a young man. "Hey you, that was dangerous. I'm going to demand compensation," he yelled at me. I thought to myself, who was the dangerous one here? I didn't have the energy to argue back. He didn't seem to be injured. "Please call the police. Please," I managed to say. He appeared to be calling the police. Soon, both the police and an ambulance arrived. Before I knew it, I was crying. I could hear the other driver telling the police it was my fault from a distance. I knew I needed evidence, so I mustered all my strength to take out the SD card from the dash cam and put it in my pocket. "I have a wedding to attend later today," I remember telling the paramedics repeatedly, though I don't remember much. The next thing I knew, I was on a hospital bed. "Frederica, are you okay?" I heard Chase's voice and opened my eyes. "Yeah, I'm okay. What about the wedding?" I asked. "It's been called off. You've been in an accident after all. We can always do it another time," Chase replied. At that moment, I burst into tears. "It's okay not to have the wedding today. Being healthy is more important. You'll need to stay a few days for tests," he comforted me. But he seemed sadly calm about the wedding being called off. I couldn't help but wonder if Chase really felt nothing about canceling the wedding. I had broken a rib and had some bruises, but because I hit my head, I needed further tests. After Chase left, Alicia called me. "Frederica, are you okay? I heard from Chase. If you need anything, I'll bring it to you," she offered. "Alicia, thank you. I'm a bit sore, but I'm okay." "Can you bring my laptop?" I asked, suddenly feeling the need to check the dashcam footage. Your laptop? Okay, I'll bring it right away." Alicia seemed surprised, but agreed. Alicia lived nearby, and within 20 minutes, she and her husband arrived at my room. "Frederica, I'm so glad you're safe," Alicia said, hugging me while crying. Seeing her face, I started crying too. I was so happy to have friends who cared about my safety, but it made Chase's calmness all the more concerning. "Here's your laptop," Alicia handed it to me, and I pulled out the SD card from my clothes and played it. The accident was clearly recorded. "What is this? This is too dangerous." Alicia was angrier than I was. "That guy blames me for the accident. I have to submit this evidence to the police," I told her. We talked about what happened during the accident and how the wedding was called off. I felt down, but talking to Alicia and her husband made me feel a bit better. The video from the SD card continued to play in the background, and I didn't notice until an unbelievable conversation between Chase and Marissa started playing. It was from the day before the wedding. "This is where my junior is going to ram into us. I told him to really go for it, so it should be fine," Chase said. "Chase, you're clever. This means we're getting money, right?" Marissa replied. "Yeah, she's got plenty from her parents' inheritance." "Did you check how much?" Chase asked. Despite our cheerful chatting earlier, the mood in the room suddenly turned heavy. "No, I don't want to hear anymore." Alicia panicked and stopped the video. "Was that accident targeted at me?" I was in a state of panic. I couldn't believe it. "Anyway, let's call the police," Alicia said, and I reported it to the police. "Hey, is Chase the type of person to do something like this?" Alicia asked her husband David while waiting for the police. "No, we only met him as a bartender and customer. I don't know anything about his private life," David replied. Indeed, we had hung out a lot, but none of us really knew about Chase's upbringing or the life he had led. Even while dating, Chase was someone who rarely talked about himself. Minutes later, the police arrived, and I showed them the video. I explained the situation of the accident and expressed my desire for a thorough investigation. The police took the SD card with them. After the police left, Chase entered my hospital room. "Hey, Alicia's here too, Frederica." "That's good." "I brought your things," Chase said nonchalantly. "Take your things and get out now. I don't want to see your face. I'm calling off the wedding. This is an engagement breakup," I cried out loudly to Chase. "What? Are you emotionally unstable because of the accident?" Chase looked confused. Quickly, Alicia said, "It seems like she's really shocked by the accident. She's been like this for a while. Can you leave her today and we'll talk later?" "All right, I'll leave for now. And let's talk when things have settled," Chase said, and left the room easily. I wanted to confront him more, to ask him why he had such a conversation with Marissa, and to hope he'd deny it. But the police had asked me not to say anything to Chase for now, as it might hinder the investigation. Overwhelmed by emotion, I ended up crying out loud. Alicia managed to cover for me. I explained the situation to the hospital, got my room changed, and made sure Chase would not be allowed to visit. Alicia, concerned about my mental state, came to visit for long hours every day. Though I was deeply shocked, her presence was comforting. On the morning of my discharge day, the police called. Chase, Marissa, and the man involved in the accident had been arrested. I was flooded with a mix of emotions I couldn't quite understand and cried with Alicia, who came to pick me up. According to the police, Chase and Marissa were after the inheritance I received from my parents, who died in an accident 4 years ago. As I had no siblings, all of it had come to me. The shock had been so great that I couldn't recover for a year. It was Alicia who started taking me out to cheer me up. The inheritance was substantial, but I hadn't touched it at all. I had drunkenly mentioned it once while we were all drinking. Initially, while Chase might have been after the inheritance, he genuinely came to care for me and thought of marrying me. But as our relationship continued, his interest waned, and he wanted to break up. However, breaking up with me meant he could no longer access the inheritance. Chase had lived a flashy life in his youth, and Eric, who caused the accident, was one of his junior friends. In the past, Chase and Marissa had been caught for a similar scam involving an accident, but it had been dismissed due to insufficient evidence. They planned to enact the same scheme on our wedding day to get money from me. The plan was for me to be severely injured, the wedding never happening, leading to an eventual breakup, and then they would pressure me for the inheritance and compensation. Hearing that they also planned to fabricate evidence of infidelity to claim alimony in the case of engagement breakup was terrifying. The one mistake Chase made was forgetting to remove the SD card from the dash cam. The original plan was to have removed it. Hearing everything, I was relieved that we hadn't submitted the marriage registration. My injuries were minor, but given the severity of the crime, Chase wouldn't be leaving prison anytime soon. After discharge, I stayed with Alicia and her husband until I recovered. "Frederica, let's eat steak together today," Alicia said. I was so grateful for her. Normally, I wouldn't have been able to recover from such a shock, but with her help, I was enjoying my days. We visited my parents' grave together. I am grateful to them for giving me a strong body and wonderful friends. I prayed and thanked my parents. I haven't touched the inheritance yet. My injuries have significantly healed, and soon I plan to start living alone near Alicia's